My greedy mother-in-law tried to take my car by force. When I stopped her, she hit me hard with a chair stick. I fell to the floor, shocked and in pain. My husband just stood there, watching silently. I felt anger and deep betrayal. That night, I made a decision. I packed my bags, left the house, and decided to take back control of my life and fight for justice. The next morning, they woke up to a shocking surprise they never expected. My name is Lauren. I'm 31 years old and work as a business consultant in Atlanta, Georgia. On the outside, my life looked perfect. I had a great career, earning $3,000 a month, and lived in a nice home with my husband, Brian. To others, we seemed like a successful young couple building a life together. But behind closed doors, things were far from perfect. My marriage was falling apart. Brian lost his job 7 months ago, and while I was okay supporting us at first, everything changed. Instead of being thankful, Brian became distant and spent more time away from home. Meanwhile, his controlling mother, Olivia, became a constant presence in our lives. Her influence was toxic, and she had no limits to her demands. Olivia didn't see my income as mine. She treated it like it was hers, always coming up with family needs to take my money. My financial success, which should have been a source of pride, became the target of her greed. From the outside, no one could see the chaos in my home. I had worked hard to build my consulting business, earn respect, and create a stable life. But none of that seemed to matter to the people closest to me. The tension in my house was unbearable, and I felt completely alone. I knew I had to take charge, but at the time, I didn't know how. I didn't realize how bad things would get before I took back control of my life. The image of a perfect life was falling apart, and so was my patience with the people taking advantage of me. 6 years ago, I met Brian at a corporate networking event. The room was buzzing with energy as professionals mingled, shared ideas, and talked about their goals. Brian stood out with his charming smile and confident personality. We started talking, and I immediately felt a connection. He spoke passionately about his career goals and dreams of traveling the world and living a life full of adventure. It felt like fate. We started dating soon after and quickly became inseparable. Brian seemed perfect, ambitious, supportive, and kind. We dreamed of building great careers and creating a future together. For 3 years, everything seemed to fall into place, and I thought I had found my forever partner. 4 years ago, we got married. Our wedding was a beautiful celebration with family and friends. At the time, I was sure that love and ambition would get us through anything. I felt unstoppable with Brian by my side, ready to take on the world as a team. In the beginning of our marriage, we supported each other. I encouraged Brian in his career, and he cheered me on as I grew my consulting business. We celebrated every little win, like landing new clients or reaching personal goals. I truly believed we had an unbreakable bond. But over time, cracks began to show. 7 months ago, Brian lost his job. I reassured him it was only temporary and took on the financial responsibility without hesitation. I believed in him and thought he'd bounce back. After all, I had built my own career from scratch and knew how hard work could pay off. What I didn't expect was how much Brian would change. He became distant and detached, and the dreams we had shared began to feel like they were slipping away. Instead of coming together during a tough time, we drifted apart, leaving me to handle everything on my own. That's when Brian's mother, Olivia, stepped in. At first, I thought she was just trying to help while Brian was out of work. But it soon became clear that her involvement wasn't about support, it was about control. Olivia, in her late 60s, had a strong, demanding personality. She started visiting more and more, often without warning, and interfered in every part of our lives. What began as occasional advice turned into constant criticism. She judged everything, including how I ran my household. Her presence became overwhelming, and instead of feeling supported, I felt trapped and suffocated. Olivia started controlling everything, even how I spent my money and the clothes I wore. Then came the demands. At first, it seemed harmless. One evening, she said, "Lauren, I've been so stressed lately. A spa retreat would really help. You don't mind helping out, do you? We're family." Brian urged me to agree, saying it would make her happy. I reluctantly said yes, thinking it was a one-time favor. I was wrong. Her requests quickly escalated. She wanted designer clothes, extravagant parties, and even vacations for her friends. She always made it seem like it was my duty, saying things like, "You're doing so well, Lauren. Surely you can spare a little for family." I try to set boundaries. I explained that I was already paying for everything, our mortgage, utilities, groceries, and couldn't afford her indulgences. But Olivia brushed off my concerns, calling me selfish. "What's the point of success if you can't share it with family?" she'd say, glaring at me. Brian stayed silent, avoiding conflict and trying to play the peacemaker. His lack of support only made Olivia bolder, leaving me to deal with her alone. It wasn't just about the money. What hurt most was realizing that Brian didn't have my back. The partnership I thought we had was falling apart. I felt completely alone in my own home. One evening, Olivia made another outrageous request, a luxurious vacation for her friends. That was my breaking point. I sat down with her and Brian and calmly said, "Olivia, I'm happy to help when it's truly necessary, but I can't keep paying for non-essential things. I've worked hard to build my business, and I need to focus on our household expenses." I kept my tone firm but respectful. Her response was sharp and immediate. "You're being selfish, Lauren," she snapped. "After all I've done for this family, this is how you treat me? You don't understand the value of family." I turned to Brian, hoping he'd back me up, but he just shrugged and avoided eye contact. His indifference stung more than Olivia's words. Over the next few weeks, Olivia doubled down on the guilt. She'd say things like, "It's a shame when family doesn't look out for each other," or "Money changes people. It makes them forget their roots." No matter how clear I was about my boundaries, she kept testing me. One evening, she made a shocking suggestion. In her usual casual tone, she said something that left me speechless. "I need a car to get around, and yours is nice. Why don't you just let me have it? You can always buy another one," Olivia said casually. I stared at her, shocked. My car wasn't just a vehicle, it was critical for my work and daily life. "I can't do that," I replied, trying to stay calm. "I need my car for my business." Her expression darkened. "You're just proving how selfish you are," she hissed. "You don't deserve the success you have." Her words hurt, but what hurt even more was Brian's silence. Once again, I was left alone, fighting a battle I shouldn't have to face. Olivia's demand for my car was a new low. Her boldness seemed to have no limits, and I was done letting her push me around. Still, I tried to keep my cool. "Olivia," I said firmly, "I've explained that my car is essential for my work. I can't give it away." Her response was immediate and explosive. "You're being selfish," she shouted. "After everything I've done for this family, you can't even give me a car? You don't deserve the life you have." I turned to Brian, desperate for support. "Do you have anything to say about this?" I asked, my voice shaking with frustration. Brian shifted uncomfortably in his seat, avoiding my gaze. "Let's not make this a big deal," he muttered. His indifference cut through me like a knife. Before I could say another word, Olivia's anger boiled over. She stood abruptly, scanning the room. Her eyes landed on a chair leaning against the wall, a leftover from Brian's childhood. Without hesitation, she grabbed it and swung it at me with full force. The stick hit the side of my head, and pain shot through me like fire. I stumbled backward, clutching my head as tears filled my eyes. "What is wrong with you?" I gasped, struggling to steady myself. "You ungrateful brat," she screamed. "You think you can keep everything for yourself? You don't belong in this family." I looked at Brian, silently begging him to step in, to defend me, to show he cared. But he stood frozen, watching the chaos like a spectator at a show. In that moment, something inside me broke. I realized the man I had married was no longer my partner. He was enabling the abuse I was enduring. That night, I made up my mind. While Brian was out with friends, I packed my bags, ignoring the pounding pain in my head. It was time to take back my life. I left the house with tears streaming down my face and drove straight to my parents' home. I knew I could never go back. It was time to take my life back. When I arrived, my mother immediately knew something was wrong. Her eyes widened in shock when she saw the swelling on my head. "Lauren, what happened?" she asked, her voice trembling. I broke down and told them everything: Olivia's growing demands, the attack with the chair, and Brian's refusal to defend me. My parents were furious and heartbroken. "You need to see a doctor," my father said firmly. "This isn't just family drama. This is assault." The next morning, I went to the doctor. They examined the injury and confirmed it was consistent with blunt force trauma. The medical report and photos of the bruise became the first pieces of evidence I'd use to hold Olivia accountable. I also contacted a lawyer, Rachel Green, who came highly recommended for her sharp mind and kind approach. Sitting across from her in her office, I told her my story. She listened carefully, her face showing both empathy and determination. "Lauren," Rachel said, "this isn't just about divorce. What Olivia did is a crime, and she needs to be held accountable. Brian's failure to act only strengthens your case." She advised me to collect all possible evidence: receipts showing Olivia's financial exploitation, text messages of her demands, and anything else that documented the emotional and physical abuse I had faced. With her guidance, I started putting together a full picture of the toxic environment I had endured for years. For the first time in months, I felt strong. I wasn't just reacting to Olivia and Brian anymore, I was taking charge. The pain from the assault was still there, but so was my determination. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my dignity and independence and making sure they couldn't hurt me or anyone else again. A few days later, while I was organizing evidence with Rachel's help, my mother called me from the living room. Her voice was hesitant. "Lauren, Brian, and Olivia are here. They want to talk to you." I felt a wave of anger, but also a sense of calm determination. I wasn't going to let them manipulate me again. Taking a deep breath, I stepped into the living room. Brian looked uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact. Olivia had a faintly remorseful look, but it didn't seem genuine. "Lauren," Brian began, his voice low and hesitant, "we're here to apologize. Mom knows she went too far." Olivia nodded, her tone syrupy and insincere. Olivia clasped her hands dramatically. "I was under a lot of stress, Lauren," she said. "I shouldn't have acted that way, but we're family. Let's put this behind us and move on." I crossed my arms, keeping my voice calm but firm. "You might be able to move past the fact that you physically attacked me, Olivia, or that you did nothing to stop it, Brian. But do you really think an apology can fix what you've done?" Brian's desperation started to show. "Please, Lauren," he said, his voice shaking. "Let's not make this worse. What do you want? We'll do anything to make it right." Their sudden willingness to negotiate gave me an idea. If they were serious, I'd make sure their actions had real consequences, not just empty apologies. "If you're serious," I said, meeting Brian's eyes, "then transfer the house into my name. That's the only way I'll even consider talking to you." Olivia's mask slipped, and for a moment, her anger was clear. "You're asking too much," she snapped. But Brian, realizing they had no leverage, reluctantly agreed. "Fine," he said through gritted teeth. "We'll sign the papers." It felt like a small victory, but I wasn't naive. I knew this wasn't the end. Gaining control of the house was a step forward, but the real fight, for justice, was still ahead. For the first time, though, I felt like the scales were tipping in my favor. 2 weeks later, Brian and Olivia returned with the legal documents to transfer the house into my name. My lawyer, Rachel, carefully reviewed every detail to make sure there were no loopholes. Once everything was clear, I signed the papers, and the house was legally mine. It was a big step toward reclaiming my independence. With the house secured, Rachel and I focused on the criminal charges against Olivia. The evidence was solid: the doctor's report, photos of my injury, and threatening text messages Olivia sent after the attack. Brian's failure to act only added to the case, proving the toxic environment I had endured. When the court date came, I walked into the courtroom feeling both nervous and determined. Brian and Olivia sat at the defendant's table, their faces a mix of indifference and barely concealed anger. Olivia's lawyer tried to dismiss the incident as a family misunderstanding caused by stress, but the evidence told a different story, one of greed, manipulation, and outright violence. Rachel's arguments were clear and sharp. She didn't just focus on the physical assault, but also highlighted the financial exploitation and emotional abuse I had suffered. The courtroom fell silent as the full weight of the evidence became undeniable. "This is not a misunderstanding," Rachel told the judge firmly. "This is repeated abuse, ending in a violent attack that could have caused serious harm." The judge listened carefully, reviewing all the evidence. When it was Olivia's turn to speak, she tried to justify her actions, claiming she had been pushed to her limit. But her lack of real remorse was obvious to everyone in the room. After deliberating, the judge made a clear decision. Olivia was sentenced to 7 months in jail for aggravated assault and ordered to pay $7,000 in damages. While Brian wasn't charged criminally, the judge called him out for failing to protect me, saying his behavior was deeply disappointing. As I left the courtroom, I felt like a huge weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Justice had been served. Olivia and Brian no longer had control over me, and for the first time in months, I could imagine a better future. With the court case behind me, I was free to rebuild my life. The house, now legally mine, became more than just a home. It was a symbol of everything I had fought for. But it wasn't just about owning the house. It was about reclaiming my dignity, independence, and future. My parents were my biggest support during this time. Their love and encouragement gave me the strength I had been missing for so long. They reminded me to focus on myself, and for the first time in a long while, I felt safe enough to do just that. I threw myself into my consulting business with new energy. Work became an outlet for me, a way to turn my pain into something productive. I took on bigger challenges, expanded my client base, and even started mentoring younger professionals entering the field. Helping others while rebuilding my career gave me a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. Outside of work, I found a new passion in supporting other women who had experienced abuse. I reached out to local organizations and started volunteering. By sharing my story, I hoped to inspire others. Turning my pain into something positive was empowering, and I realized I wasn't alone. Many women had faced similar struggles and found their strength, just like I was finding mine. Brian tried to reach out to me a few times after the court case, but I blocked him on every platform. I had no interest in hearing his excuses or letting him manipulate me again. Olivia's jail sentence was a clear reminder that actions have consequences, and I hoped it would stop her from hurting anyone else in the future. As the weeks turned into months, I began to heal, physically, emotionally, and mentally. My parents' love, my work, and my new purpose gave me the strength to keep moving forward. Little by little, I was building a life that was truly mine. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. I was building a life on my own terms, based on my values and self-worth. Looking back, it's hard to believe how much has changed. The bruises on my head healed quickly, but the emotional scars took longer. Even so, every moment of pain taught me important lessons about my strength, my value, and the need to stand up for myself. Reclaiming my independence wasn't just about winning in court or securing the house. It was about proving to myself that I deserved better. I had endured years of manipulation and betrayal, but I refused to let those experiences define me. Instead, I used them as motivation to rebuild a life where I was in control. My consulting business has grown more than I ever imagined. Without the toxic presence of Brian and Olivia, I've been able to focus fully on my goals. I've expanded my services, taken on leadership roles in my field, and even received recognition for my work. Every success feels like proof of the strength I found within myself. Beyond work, I've found purpose in helping others. Sharing my story with women in similar situations has been deeply rewarding. It reminds me that my journey wasn't just about taking back my life, it was also about empowering others to do the same. Brian and Olivia are no longer part of my life, and I'm at peace with that. Their attempts to control and hurt me are in the past, and I've made sure they can never harm me again. The house they once tried to use against me has become a place of safety and freedom. As I move forward, I carry the lessons of this chapter with me. I've learned that self-worth is non-negotiable and that true strength comes from knowing when to walk away. My journey wasn't easy, but it shaped me into the strong, independent woman I am today. For that, I am truly grateful. My future is mine to create, and this time, I'm in charge of every choice. Thank you for joining me on this journey of resilience and growth. Stories like this remind us all how important it is to stand up for ourselves and never settle for less than we deserve. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Did this story resonate with you? What would you have done in Lauren's shoes? Let's keep the conversation going. And if you want to hear more inspiring stories, be sure to like this post and share it with others. Together, we can remind each other to stay strong and never stop striving for the life we deserve.